they called it doors and windows. And they
Mhm.
were saying, windows, if you're only willing to like kind of invest in something where you could see what's out there, you're not going to get these huge opportunities or really crush it. But the people who are willing to open a door where like you don't know what exactly is behind it, you have some idea what's behind it, but it's not super clear. It's you got to open it and walk through that thing and kind of deal with whatever's there. And I feel like that's what I'm kind of doing right now. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Side Hustle Experiment podcast. Today, we're going to do a solo episode. We're going to kind of recap some of our favorite episodes, just shoot the shit, and yeah, just kind of go freestyle. We haven't done one of these in a couple months, maybe. So we literally usually talk for 30 minutes before this. We literally said no words whatsoever, and we're just going to let it rip. So we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, it's been forever. I feel like we haven't recorded one of these in so long, but that's a good thing. That means we're not being lazy and getting guests, right? I
For
think.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had crazy guests like these. I mean, all the guests are good, but the last probably 5 to 10 brought the heat.
Yeah, that the last one, which we're recording this before it's being put out, but the Psycho one, dude, that was like so much good Amazon knowledge, which is funny because I'm just like sitting there, not really. That's not my wheelhouse anymore, but just hearing all that stuff he had to say was just really good. Like I don't hear people on podcasts talk like that often. Like, it's way more general than him like breaking down all these things that he systematizes. It was really impressive to me.
Yeah. What are your biggest takeaways or what you like best about it?
Um,
Growing your Amazon business can be super, super lonely. Your friends, your family, no one understands what you're doing. They think you're weird. That's why I created the Advanced Arbitrage Tactics School community, because I felt the same way. I wanted to build a community of like-minded people who are trying to crush it and grow their Amazon business. We do coaching calls in there. You have exclusive access to me to ask any questions. I pretty much answer any question in there. If you want to grow your Amazon business and want some like-minded people to hang out with, I'd love to see you inside. Just click the link below. It is only $15. I want to keep it super affordable for everyone. So hope to see you in there.
Well, first off, before we do that, if you guys want to see a live show, listen to this. Yeah, I forgot just now. I remember to mention this. We were thinking about doing a live show sometime during the week. If you want to see that, if you would tune in for that, and if you prefer during the day or prefer in the morning, let us know in the comments below. Got to get that out of the way quickly.
Yeah.
But I mean, just the big takeaways was just how much he like knew about that. And I know that he started from like where I started, where I didn't really know how to source, that we just were buying hot products. For him to come that far and basically not even source on his own, just like have this team that sources for him, I don't know, it was just very impressive. And how he leverages other people's time rather than just kind of doing most of the grunt work himself, which is what I do. And I know that's like largely what you do as well.
Same.
It makes you just open your mind, I think, a bit.
That was one of my biggest takeaways from that episode is, so it'll be the episode right before this one if you want to go listen to it, was just how he leverages time and almost how he thinks about employment and getting the right team in place instead of kind of all the normal stuff that you would do. When I used to have VAs, the process would be like, hey, here's a test, like find some like profitable leads. And then I would review the leads. He has, I don't know, 20 or 30 questions that have nothing to do with Amazon. Kind of a normal interview, like if you're going to go work for a Fortune 500 company or just a company in general. And I thought that was super impressive and it seems like he's getting crazy results. Just kind of when we were on the call and he said, oh, here's the sheet from the day, 50% ROI. There's about 20, 30 leads. And I was like, damn, that's insane.
Yeah, I think the way he thinks about like the character of the person rather than like just the skills of the person is really good, because I've always heard that like you hire for attitude and you train for aptitude. So that's kind of how he thinks about that. And I don't know, you just don't hear a lot of people talk about VAs and stuff candidly. I think you hear the VA Amazon guys, they're all over the place. I know Soros is a big like VA Amazon guy, but you don't really hear him talk about as much of like that aspect of it. His more about like motivating my team, that type of thing. But him, Psycho, talking about like training the actual team, that was just like, to me, very, very, very interesting. So that is a good listen. If you guys sell on Amazon, you listen to this, you have to watch that one. That one and Rick's one, I feel like are Amazon top tier, like learning lessons for Amazon itself.
Yeah, and I liked when most of the people who hire VAs, most of the stumbling blocks from what I've heard, and when I've hired my very first VA, I didn't have anything in place. You know what a VA? It's virtual assistant. They work in Philippines. You could pay them $3, $4 an hour to source for you, do admin tasks, whatever. Um, was the training. So when we asked, how do you train the VAs? He's like, oh, it's 90 days. Like, this is phase one, this is phase two. If you make it, and it's like, oh, if you make it to these phases, it wasn't like everyone goes through all 90 days. It's, hey, you got to get through one, and then two, and then three. I found that really, really impressive. And it seems similar that you just don't get to interact with the team. You almost have to do a certain thing first, and then you could kind of source, and then you could do this. And it's very systematized and does not surprise me that he has a killer team based on what he outlines in that episode.
And didn't he? Maybe I heard this wrong. Did he say he did an hour call every single day with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. Like
Yeah.
to like, but it's really not. I mean, the really one thing that I took away from that made me kind of a bit disappointed myself is that I was like, damn, if I would have took 5 months to do that, I didn't have to quit the Amazon thing. I could have took really a lot of time to build a team, and maybe my sales would have shrunk 70%, 50%, whatever. But I could have just kept something rolling in the background. But whatever. I try not to think too much into that. It's one of the lessons I am going to mention later in this. But that made me think like you really can kind of put this business on autopilot once you get to a certain point.
Yeah, maybe you could reconsider maybe potentially hiring a VA to source for me as well. I haven't got there yet, but I don't know. It's something definitely to think about if you're trying to outsource. Yeah, if you're at a certain scale, I feel like too.
Yeah, I mean, at your point too, especially the way you've like talked about all of it and stuff, I think it'd be a good thing to take on. Like, dude,
Yeah,
think about you think like 6 hours a week, 5 hours a week, where you got to be on a call with them. I don't know, message him. You know, that's one thing I love
true.
about these pods is like anytime there's something interesting, it's like, oh wait, well, I'm like semi friends with that person now. I can just go message them and ask them about it. So like you could just go message him and say, hey, can you just like shoot me some SOPs and stuff? And he'd probably be like, yeah, for sure, dude.
That's
So
a really good point.
yeah, that's
I
something
didn't
you
even
should
think
try.
about
You
that.
should try and think about like what's the cost? A few hours, a few
True.
$100. You pay them $200 every 2 weeks. You don't even really lose any money. So I think there's a huge upside there, and it adds a skill to your repertoire that you can teach other people, or you can use in the future for other businesses that you can teach me. Anything like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah, and
it just helps.
I think that's a big point about business too, is the fact it's always hard to do something. I wouldn't say I necessarily failed at having a VA. I just did it the wrong way. I hired one, I think before I even had like 10K in sales. And it's why everyone else hires one. I was running a book business and I was like, I want to scale OA. So I'm going to hire someone else to do it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I was like, hey, like, why doesn't this person know what to do? It's like, well, because I can't train them. So it is not like if looking back, I should have just bought them a course and told them to go through it. But I didn't even think to do that because I didn't really know anything about OA. And then once I kind of I was like, this isn't working out. I did the next step where like, oh, I'm gonna hire two and see who performs better. And I had a little bit more systems in place, but I just didn't have like what it took. And then the third time around, I got one. It was going all I tried a service. That was probably the third iteration. That didn't really work out. And then the fourth time I went through Online Jobs PH, I actually had stuff in place. At that point, like I had a YouTube channel with OA content so I could direct them to there, but I almost think it would have been best, which is a huge undertaking, is basically to make a course
Mhm.
or just film yourself sourcing. Or, I think where I went wrong was fell into the mindset, oh, it's just easier to do it myself, which is like a shitty mindset to have if you want to grow. So I'm running into that problem right now where I have a couple of really good opportunities, but I'm just juggling all of it because it's just me right now. So yeah, like when something happens, make the SO or make an SOP or make a Loom video and then be like, hey, when XYZ happens, link. And then you could just be like, hey, refer to have this master document. Um, yeah, it just really I think that was one of the hard parts too, is I just wasn't far enough in the business or had enough experience to give a hardcore, hey, here's the ROI, here's kind of what I'm looking for. Now I have a lot of different, like, okay, like we could get 10-15% all the time at this site. So I have a lot more knowledge, or hey, we're gonna leverage just kind of gift cards. Like, here's the average, like we're gonna source, like we could get 10% off. Like I wasn't thinking that way back then. I had more the mindset that the VA was kind of not sending the best leads, where the leads were all right, and then I would apply what I knew to try to leverage a gift card to make it even better. So I kind of had the wrong mindset there, but yeah, if I had to do that over again, I think I would do a much better job. But it's just like, oh, like, the last 4 times, right? It kind of worked, but didn't really work. But then again, that's kind of business because I bought a lot of ASINs that shit the bed, but I
Yep.
continue to buy profitable ones today.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what happened to me. I feel like probably everybody that hires a VA goes through like exactly what you just said. It's like you kind of get loose on the stuff because I think that you probably don't believe in them a lot. So you're just like, whatever, let's just try to get anything so I'm not losing money every month. And then you start realizing this isn't even worth it and they don't even know what they're doing. And I'm still having to do all the work. What am I
Yeah.
even hiring this person for? That's exactly what happened to me. But it seems that maybe looking at the employee type of thing as an investment of, maybe I have to dump $1,000 into this VA before they're competent enough to work for me. That's probably a better way off. Like I have someone like, my editor that does stuff. I pay him $200 every 2 weeks and he has like minimal work he's doing. He's like, dude, is there more stuff you can give me? And I'm like, no, I just want you to like stay loyal to me. I want to teach you all this stuff, and then we can just do stuff in the future. And I have this person that I can really have a good connection
Mm.
with and stuff. But even looking back on him, I should have trained him even better. But it's just,
Yeah.
I think it's just a learning lesson, like part of the game. But I don't know. There's a lot to take from it.
Yeah, it's definitely something you have to commit to. And I guess the last point on this, and we'll move on, is I think the hard part too is the trust factor based on, if I were to give them my spreadsheet of every ASIN I ever bought, right, to check in on them, right? Like, who knows? I've definitely done online PH jobs, PH interviews where they're like, hey, here's a Google Doc, and it's obviously someone they work for, and every single lead they've ever like given them, or you're giving out like storefronts and stuff like that, that you kind of go after or look at every once in a while. It's just a lot to kind of let go, but I mean eventually you have to kind of get to that point where you can trust them and make that leap.
Yep, 100%. What's the who's the next person you want to talk about, or do you have a good? Because I just had mine on a crazy list here. None of them are in order or anything.
Yeah, I don't really have any in order. So the one of the top ones that I had was I think it was episode 5 is when we did our goals podcast. I think it's hilarious. I kind of watched snippets of that back. I skipped through real quick, and it's just so funny that let's just call it 6 months ago. We had all these different things that we thought we would do. Besides selling on Amazon, I am not doing any of them. I thought I was gonna have an Etsy T-shirt business that was just like cranking money. I like watched it back and I said, "Oh, the business is just so clear. I know exactly what I have to do. This is gonna be great." And yeah, it lasted maybe like 2 months. I wouldn't even say lasted. I just made a kind of a different decision, I guess. And instead of doing that, now I'm doing Amazon influencer program. That wasn't even on my radar, I don't think, in that episode.
No.
The school group was not on my radar in the goals episode. So yeah, it was definitely eye-opening. And I think for me, it's you just sometimes in this business, I think it's more rocky than ever it's ever been. I I'm gonna bring up a topic for my next one, talking about the rockiness. Um, but you just have to be willing to adapt and change. And I actually heard this thing on the My First Millions podcast, and they talked about this almost theory that like a like a venture person had, and they called it doors and windows. And they
Mhm.
were saying, windows, if you're only willing to like kind of invest in something where you could see what's out there, you're not going to get these huge opportunities or really crush it. But the people who are willing to open a door where like you don't know what exactly is behind it, you have some idea what's behind it, but it's not super clear. It's you got to open it and walk through that thing and kind of deal with whatever's there. And I feel like that's what I'm kind of doing right now. And so far, so good. The path has been pretty good. Obviously, it's still like the influencer program. I'm very much doing online arbitrage as well. With this, there's just lots of unknowns. It's kind of the wild, wild west. But I like it. Obviously, the Etsy is a window. It's a very proven path. There's big influencers, telling you what designs to make, what software, all that kind of stuff. But the influencer program does not seem as clear. But I think it's a good opportunity. Smash with OA, and same with the school group, just being able to help other people for a huge bargain.
Yeah. Oh, do you remember what my goals were? I'm pretty sure I do remember them. I said one was I wanted to dunk a basketball.
Yeah.
I'm still on that goal, so I haven't given up on that one yet. The other one was I wanted to lose a certain amount of weight. I think get a six pack. Was that it?
Yeah, you said get a six pack and lose weight. Mine
Yeah.
was to lose weight too. I guess I did that. I've lost 40 pounds so far. Yeah, if you look at that episode compared to this episode, like look at my face, it's insane. When
Oh
I
yeah.
was watching it back, I was like, oof.
Well, from that episode, I think I lost like 12 pounds, and now I've gained all 12 back. But it was kind of not like not like I fell off the wagon. I was just like, I quit this. I don't feel good, and I like wasn't having any fun. So I'm like, I can't lose weight even more. I was down. I'm like 210 or something. I was down like almost to 200, under 200 maybe, and I'm like, okay, we're not doing this. So now I'm back up to 210. But I don't know what my other goals were. I think it was. Do you remember what mine were?
I think you wanted to scale an offer, I think.
Well, still doing that too. I'm doing pretty good. I must have not fell off the wagon too hard. But I feel like some of the stuff I don't know,
I
maybe I
don't
don't
know
remember.
where you were at Amazon wise at that
I mean, I was
episode,
I
because that
was
was an
I
early
was,
episode.
I was already gonna quit. But
Yeah.
I wasn't saying it out loud because I hadn't talked about I would quit in November. So I wasn't like talking
Yeah.
about it really. Yeah. But that's funny. What about the last ones with the guests we've had recently? Which ones what'd you find like what would you find the most interesting one? Or what was your favorite out of the last like 5, 6?
Oh man, there are a couple. So I would say Duke Does Amazon was definitely one of my favorites. He's been on twice. The most recent episode, I think one of my favorite parts of that um, was basically when he talked about getting like 20K worth of inventory restricted overnight, and just how he handled that. One, it goes to talk that we play in Amazon sandbox, and I don't know. They make the rules, whether they're fair, they're not fair. And then you have to make a decision whether or not you want to continue to play in that sandbox or go to another one. I just feel like if you watch that episode, he's just so cool, calm, and collected how he handled that. And it really made me think I need to be more like that. More, he didn't get emotional about it. I mean, maybe he had 1 or 2 days where like, oh man, like what the hell am I gonna do? I remember talking to him on Instagram, be like, "Oh, did you get gated?" And like we went back and forth. Um, but he just kind of started a Walmart account, and he's like, "I'm just gonna move this, try to get as much money as I can, or break even, or do whatever he had to do." Um, so I think that was a big takeaway from that. Another takeaway I had from that is basically profit, like scale for profit, not for orange bars, not for revenue. And then a third thing that you probably don't know about this, but have you heard the rumors that like Nike's going to come back to Amazon?
I have heard about that actually. I
That's
did see a
crazy.
tweet, one tweet about it.
Yeah, so I feel like that is kind of going back to what he said. You know, you play in their sandbox. If Nike does come back, I mean, who knows what will happen? I did a video about that. I don't know. By the time this comes out, like 2 weeks ago, um, just kind of going over what I think, and I do think they come back. And you got to pivot. Like I don't know what that looks like per se, but it'd be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I hate to toot my own horn here, but does this not make my predictions? You know what I find funny is that like Psycho said this last time too. Everyone says this. Like the reality is, and Kyle, like every guy I bring on always says this. I'm like, dude, I guess so, but they're always like, well, you can't predict the future or whatever. You can't. Well, that's not like I'm not saying I can predict the future, but you can see trends. Like you can't just say, be
Yeah.
like, well, it's completely out of our control. We all have no idea. Who even cares? It's like, dude, that's not the reality of it. Like you can see certain patterns, unless you're just an idiot. I don't know. I can't help that. But like I can see this stuff happening. And Nike being back, I'm not even surprised because how many times have I said it? They want to be a brand focused platform to where like they're the Shopify of this stuff, but they're way bigger than Shopify. They already are, but they can even host the brands on the platform. Nike comes back. There's going to be more and more brands that come back. And it's not going to be, I think, as simple as, well, they're back. So now you have to sell it just as cheap as Nike. No, I think they'll kick all the sellers off those listings. That's what's
Hmm.
going to happen. They're not going to come back and then still allow the competition. That just doesn't make any sense. So I think more and more brands are going to come on. I'm not trying to like fear monger or whatever, but I do think that that's just the trend of how it's going. And I said that, I probably said that on that episode, like at the beginning of the year. And then it's just, it keeps like more evidence comes to light that that's what they tend to do because it's a safer move from them. And them saying like the biggest thing that people talk about is well, it's going to take all this third party seller revenue away. 60% of the revenues for third party sellers. That's not third party sellers aren't just us. Like Nike
Yeah.
would be a third party seller. Like all the private label brands are third
Yeah.
party
That's a
sellers.
good point.
Like when people act like they just like misconstrue all this stuff with like their cognitive dissonance of like, well, I can only do what's benefiting me. It's just not the reality. All these companies are third party sellers. Like every company you see, if it does not say sold by Amazon, guess what? That will be third party. So these people are going to come on. They're not going to lose the third party revenue. They're probably going to increase it because if people know they're going to get legit stuff from Nike and those listings are stopped from being like men's water shoes and you click on it, it's a woman's Air Force One, yeah, they're going to buy way more stuff from Amazon. I haven't bought a Nike shoe in I don't even know how long, but if it was on Amazon, I would probably buy more Nike shoes.
For
So,
sure.
like, if you knew what you were looking for, and I was like, "Hey, dude, go check out this Nike shoe," you're probably just gonna look it up on Amazon, but you're probably not gonna
To
try to
be
find
honest, if I got targeted on Instagram for a Nike shoe, my first clinician would be to go to Amazon. Like if I was not a seller, like I obviously know the game.
it. Yep.
But that would be my could and even if it was a little bit more money, I'd probably just get it on Amazon because like it's just easier. I don't have the Nike app on my phone because I don't sell Nike anymore. Like, you know, it would just be easier to pay the $5-10 more and get also like whatever else I need that day from Amazon.
Yep.
So I do think that is super interesting. And that you bring up a really good point because I'd be really interested to when you say, oh, it's 60%, it's like, oh, that's such a big number. But then when you look at like people like Pattern and who like what percentage is that like they make up? Like Amazon Lit is selling what $75 million, right? Like when you start to look at the chunks of like these huge sellers, um, it's definitely interesting. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I do think they go the Clinique route
Yep.
where basically like, yep, you can no longer sell Clinique. And I was like, what the hell? And then literally the deadline hits. It's like, hey, we just partnered with Clinique. And I think for Amazon, it's just better for the customer overall. If
It
they
is.
could offer Nike shoes at the price that Nike has on their website, right? Like that's just a big win for them because they're also going to buy the other stuff on Amazon as well. I mean, what deal they come up with, I have no idea. And then it probably just makes it easier for Nike in general because they don't have to deal with us
Mhm.
trying to get around and using their discount codes and doing all this other stuff that probably makes their lives a nightmare. Um, so yeah, it would be really interesting. And I'm not saying I want this to happen and like for people to lose money or anything like that, because like it sucks because when Nike's successful, like the next big brand, you know, that we're all doing, arbitrage on, they're like, well, it's working out good for Nike. Like maybe we should try this too. Um, so yeah, it just seems pretty crazy. But again, it is Amazon's sandbox and you just have to deal with it. And I think too, what is interesting about this is based on a LinkedIn post. I even Googled it and nothing really came up in terms of the article or whatever saying, oh, Nike's back or whatever. It's just basically this guy kind of putting together the pieces that basically someone in Amazon apparel big time left to go to Nike, and the thought is they're going to try to get on Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, and even if it doesn't come to fruition, I still think that like this idea that my theory of this stuff, I think it is like reasonable for these companies do like stuff that you just laid out. It's more beneficial for the company. It puts more trust in the company because just people assume Amazon trust. That's like in their brain, faster shipping, that type of thing, and it benefits Amazon like largely. If you get people shopping out for their brands on your website, all the other brands are going to make more money. It goes like that. So I don't know. I think that's the trend that happens in the future. Even if Nike doesn't do it, either way, it's not a good thing either. I think people should definitely that. This
Um,
is like the best time ever to be wide, not deep, when it comes to like your different niches you're in, that type of stuff. Because all it takes is like one of those things to happen, and you lose a lot of money, especially if you get hit with a bunch of inauthentic. Because they're not, I don't know if they send that stuff back to you, but I don't think they do.
no, they
Yeah,
don't.
you're not
Not
allowed to keep
usually.
inauthentic goods, so that'd be illegal. So you got to be careful with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree 100% going the wide and not deep. And yeah, who knows when it happens? I mean, it's also the scary part is Amazon usually does not give you that much
Yep.
heads up. Like they're not going to be like, oh, like 3 months from now, they'll be like, by the end of this month, it's the 9th today. You got 21 days. And that doesn't even count like what's at your there's just going to be like a free for all. I mean, hopefully they give more heads up, but yeah, I mean, I think another part of this too, which someone mentioned on Twitter, just kind of this is almost what happens when people don't do the right thing. When you're selling women's gymnastics shoes as Air Force Ones, or you're selling the wrong sock because it's cheaper and this and that. Like, you don't think Amazon runs data to see like how many of these socks get returned? Like, they know what's going on. They know you're buying X, trying to sell it as Y. Like, they're very aware of this at this point. And I just think that is, when you do stuff like that, or have you saw it with the ungating, like people like getting ungated with blank pieces of paper. Well, what happened? They're like, all right, like no more ungating, like we're putting a pause on this. And then they start to gate bigger brands, and you gotta so I think bottom line, like always play by the rules and do the right thing.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think one of the most intriguing things to move on to these like other guests. I didn't even write anything down about Duke because I don't even feel like he's a guest. I feel like he's just like our
Yeah.
friend. But
Resident
I
expert.
like forgot about him, to be honest. Every time we talk to him, it's just like have a normal call. But I think the big thing on like betting on yourself and the mindset around that stuff was the what was the girl, the crazy flipping mom? What's her name?
Yeah, Emily.
Emily, yeah. That taught me a lot about how she just doesn't really care about what other people think. And she clearly has this foresight and this vision for what she's doing, that she's just like determined on this goal. Like her and her husband built this app, and it with no revenue coming in really. Just like, we're gonna build an
Yeah.
app and we think it's gonna work. And it now is one of the only Amazon communities or info things with an app, which is extremely impressive. I think that it just takes a lot of foresight into the future. And I think a lot of people wouldn't make that bet. I know they wouldn't. And it's
Yeah,
hard to
for
make a
sure.
bet like that. That's a lot of money and it's scary. I've done like similar thing recently. It's scary to be like, I'm kind of just taking some other path, and I hope it works out. And if not, it's just not going to be good, I guess. But whatever, you gotta just believe in yourself.
Yeah, I really like that too. And yeah, I feel like that almost gets lost sometimes in the story. I mean, if you listen to her episode, um, they maxed out like their credit cards to make this happen, and they weren't sure if it was going to work. And it definitely probably takes time to recoup that initial investment, and especially if you don't know it's going to work. So I think that, and yeah, kind of what you said. I've actually been thinking about that episode a lot, and then the one we did with Mike, the used book guy,
Mhm.
just about being like authentic and transparent. And I'm not saying that I am not authentic and transparent. I could be more, if
Yeah,
that
yeah,
makes any sense. Like, I'm not lying to you guys or like blowing smoke. It's more just, I think I need to be more comfortable with showcasing either more what I do on a daily basis or just more thoughts that are not as accepted in the
yeah.
community. Maybe like a great example, I actually wrote this down, is I saw this person post on Instagram, and they were just basically like, oh, I bought this makeup on sale for $50. I stumbled across it. It's selling for 150. I'm making $50 a unit. All you if you get 100 of these, that's $5,000. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I happen to know who this person is. I went to their storefront. They looked into Keepa. They never sold it. Like, basically, the price that they were quoting was from two Q4s ago. It was that price for like 15 days. Just like total utter ridiculousness. If you ordered 5 units from that website, you'd automatically be banned / canceled. Just absolutely crazy. But to the normal person, they're like, oh man, like, do I really want to go and like rip that post on social media? I probably should.
Yeah.
Um, but like, I don't know, right? Like, you don't really want enemies either. Um, but that's just like a really good example. Or I did a big post in the school community. All these people are saying like to buy Crayola crowns on TikTok and Instagram. I literally broke down like 5 or 6 Keepa charts, and I was like, guys, this is not going to be profitable. There are Keepa charts where last year at this time there was 10 people on the listing, 15. The current amount on the listing is like 120.
Yeah, I saw a
That's
post.
now. And the highest they were ever, like, last year was 80. So it's already 20, 40 sellers more. There's not going to be more volume there.
Yep.
Like, it's just, it's bonkers. And you look through all kind of the people, how many reviews they have. They all have like 5 reviews. It's just like people like being, oh, go buy crowns. It's going to skyrocket. Like, no matter what you do, prices are already tanking. It's just absolutely insane. This is like every Crayola listing, like markers, crowns, and we're not even in the thick of it yet. Like, it's not going to get any better. Um, and so I think like just understanding like the metrics, and maybe taking like a deeper look at kind of what everyone's saying and kind of do the opposite. And I've always been a proponent of that too. If everyone's talking about buying Stanley Cups, you missed the boat
Yep.
on the Stanley Cup. Same with the Crayola. But a lot of new people don't know that, and it's just, I don't know, kind of disheartening at times to kind of see
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
I will say one thing on that. The Amazon noted that, and I can say this now because I don't have to worry about it. But back when the Stanley Cup stuff was happening, I was early on the wave of it. I think that I was on it October of 2022,
Hmm.
and it was really big, mainly after December and during December.
Yeah.
But I realized what was going to happen anyways because I've saw all this stuff happen before. And I realized the brand was going to get saturated. It was too easy to find the stuff. There was no real advantage you had on that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, what can I do here that will lead to me actually making a profit and not getting stuck with a bunch of inventory? And then I started looking at the
If you're still listening to the podcast at this point, you are into it and a fan, and we really appreciate that. If you could do us a solid and like, subscribe, and do all that stuff, it really helps the podcast grow. And secondly, if you could tag us on Instagram, just take a picture of what part you are at the podcast. If you like it, tell us what you think about it. Tag me at Side Hustle Experiment, and I will definitely share it. Now let's get back to the podcast.
these Keepa charts and looking at every single Stanley Cup in Keepa Product Finder and seeing if there was any trends. And what I noticed that even at the time that they were reselling for a lot, but there weren't a lot of sellers, there were discontinued colors. And those discontinued
Mm.
colors were insane. So what I would do is go buy these colors that have been in stock for 200 days, 280 days on Amazon. I would go buy like 100 of them and then hold them for 30 to 60 days, send them in and just let them sit there. And then I would rip them $120. I'd rip them like 50, 70, $80 profit per cup and have over 100 of them. And I would put the alerts. So every time they came back in stock, I was the only one because no one else would even see that this was going on. And then I only bought the discontinued colors. And I think that I made $58,000 from Stanley Cups profit in a matter of 6 months. So it was a profitable strategy. And it was never what everybody else was doing because every listing I was on, I was one of the only people on there. So when these things happen, I think with these trends and stuff like that, like Crayola, for example, I would try to look adjacent to Corolla, just what's around
Yeah.
Crayola, and see what other Crayola things are available and what are people not really looking at. And then what other school accessories are kind of like that. Is there a brand that competes kind of with them, that type of thing? Because you can still make a lot of money in the same lane. You just don't need to do the exact same thing other people are doing. But it does open up a lot of olive branches when you do that type of thing. So
Yeah, that's basically I gave a bunch of alternatives in the video in the school community. And that's a really good point because I remember when we were talking about Stanley Cups when it was going on. I think it was you. You had the were you talking to your cousin or something? And she's like, "Oh yeah, I collect them."
mhm.
And you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh
that
man."
was a girl. I was
Yeah.
talking to a girl at the time. Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, what?" Like I thought everyone just bought one. And then that like clicked for me and then I kind of hopped on the same train you did with kind of the discontinued colors and stuff like that. And I think that's what's kind of missed, right? You're not you even if you were on Instagram and Twitter and like you were, but you're not being like, "Oh, go buy these cups," right? Like today you're like, "Hey, like this is my strategy like last year or whenever it was." So I think whenever someone's like kind of telling you do this or do that, they're either already did that and it's kind of like tailing off in profitability or it worked in the past and it just doesn't really work anymore.
Yeah, because if it worked, they wouldn't tell you, or they would charge you a ton of money to tell you.
Pretty much.
What I would charge for someone to get that info would be a lot of money. I wouldn't have just like told random people that stuff or put it in like on Twitter, you know. And yeah, the story was, yeah, I was talking to some girl and she was a nurse, and I was just talking about what I did for business. We hadn't been talking long, and I was telling her I was buying all these Stanley Cups, and she was like, "Oh, do you have this one? I want this one." And I was like, "Why? You already have one." And she was like, "I actually have six." She was like, "All the people at work, they all want that one too." So then I'm like, okay, there's something like way bigger going on with this Stanley thing. And it wasn't on social media yet. This was like literally over a year before the car thing happened, like really, really long ago. And then I just put the pieces together and it's like, okay, you can see that the demand here is trending upwards a lot. And these discontinued, like this is not really a cup, it's like a collector's item. Because a lot of the times what you're selling really isn't like exactly what you're selling. Like there's something else going on in the background. If you can recognize those trends, recognize those patterns, you can just make loads and loads of money. Because and all it takes is one. Like the same thing happened with the controllers. You know, I talked about those the meta controllers or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I was one of the first people to ever even sell that listing. Now that has like 200 people all the time.
Yeah.
I sold 100 of those a day back in the same time frame. That's how I made so much money that year. But I was selling not for 100 a day. I would order 100, sell 40 or 50 a day, buying them for 70, sell or 75, and selling them for like 190, 210. It was crazy. And I was competing with
Yeah.
two other people, and they were both drop shipping. So I just had to like play with the buy box and make sure they didn't undercut me. But there was no one else on the listing. I mean, and the reason I heard that from somebody else that it might be a big deal, and then I started looking into, you know, how much demand is in this whole video game thing. The VR thing had just started taking off, so it was just perfect timing for it to explode right around Christmas. And if you go the extra mile and think about some of the stuff I think you're looking into for the Amazon stuff, it's like, dude, you can make like 50K in a month, like not even a
Yeah.
problem.
Was Amazon on that listing?
No,
Okay.
it was just a lone listing, right controller, left controller on separate. They were just slinging. Like that was the best time ever for reselling for me. Probably even better than 2020 COVID. But I just didn't.
Yeah.
I think I didn't have enough confidence that it wouldn't get saturated. Because even back at that time, a lot of people say this stuff goes in cycles. It doesn't go in cycles. There's just more people that come on every single month to the platform. Things
Yeah.
were already, I could see them just getting saturated really fast. So when that was happening, I was like, oh, I saw this other product I had, like 50 sellers jumped on. I know I had just been getting like bigger on social media. So I was like, people are storefront stalking me. They're going to see that I'm selling this like all the time. And then I would like look at other. I had a bot that looked at other people's stores, and I would monitor all the people that I kind of talked to a little bit and see if they were stealing stuff from me because I would kind of tell them
Mm,
what I was doing. This is another little. I haven't talked about this ever either, and no offense to the people that I've ever talked to and networked with Amazon. Like if I was talking to you about Amazon specifically, I'm probably just trying to figure out if you're ripping me off, which is funny. I never
yeah.
not to you because me and you've never talked about it. Funny
No.
enough. And I was kind of, but it was these bigger guys, like guys that were maybe bigger than me or a little bigger, little smaller. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put their store in this thing and see if they're like ripping me off because I've been ripped off so many times. People steal them from me. And then, I saw people started to load it in that I'd like talked to in the past. And I was like, damn, they're stealing from me now because they see me flex on social media. They know I'm smart with Amazon. They know what's going on. They're like, something here is making him a bunch of money.
They're trying to be all friendly with you. They're like, "Oh, like where are you located?" Like now I'm
Yeah.
just like run it. I'm like, "Oh, they're trying to like piece together like a couple of storefronts to see if they can like figure out the location or it's always funny cuz the rare occasions that I buy something that someone sends me, unless I really really know them, I've always got burned. And to
Yeah.
this day, there's one person that jumps on every listing that I buy. I don't know if they just have my store up and just look at it every day or what the deal is because they are on pretty much everything that I get on. And it's just kind of crazy to think about stuff like that. And in general, I think it's just bad business, to be honest. Like, there's people, storefronts that I know that I respect, and I just don't go through their store. Um, and I
Yeah.
think that's it.
That's one of the reasons I'm not like so pro networking all the time. And you heard Psycho talking about this too. He was like, I think that's the biggest myth. And I'm like, that's the first time I've ever heard that. Like, I'm the only other person that preaches that like, I just didn't network because all it takes is like one bad person to just be mad at you and know how you think. Because who cares if people have your store really? Because they
True.
don't know how you're getting your product. But if they know how you think and they know where you
Yeah.
source from and they know how your thought process is, like even now, imagine if you hear me say all this stuff to you and then you have my story. You can just put the puzzle together if you're not an idiot. You
Yeah.
can be like, oh, I know how he thinks about that type of thing, and it's been in his story. He keeps loading it back
I know your
up.
personality. I know what you're like cool with, what you're not cool with, or what you might be testing, not testing. And I'd be like, when it's not profit, I'd be like, wait a second. Like
Yep.
he
And he
said
just told me he made
he
15
regularly
grand
gets
on.
over Amazon and wins the buy box. Like ding, like kind of right there. It's like, okay, like I'll give it a shot too, or whatever. I think that's another thing that a lot of people don't talk about. When you're like sharing leads with people, you give more exposure. So basically, if I say, "Hey Drew, buy this Stanley Cup," not only do the people who have my storefront, now the people that have Drew's storefront are most likely to get my storefront because they're
Yep.
just constantly looking at everyone else who's hopping on the listing. So now, if you have 4 or 5 people, I mean, it's great if you're the one stalking. You have like 4 or 5 people who are good at sourcing or whatever, like you stumble into a gold mine, but then they also get your store too.
Yeah, and it's not
Most
like
likely.
there's an abundant of opportunities in this business all the time. Like there is an
True.
unlimited amount of opportunities, but it's not like every day you're finding a product that makes you 10K a month. Like it just doesn't work
Yeah.
like that. The best people in the world are not doing that. So when you find something that's really really good and you share it with 3 other people, and one of those people kind of doesn't like how somebody else talks to him or doesn't like one of those things, and then he goes shares it with this other group of 4 or 5 people, and then one of those guys shares it to a leads group because he got paid $800 to share it, that type of thing goes on. Like that's one of the things that kind of happened to me. It's like some guy that was kind of in the peripheral that was like, "Oh, I'll get paid an extra grand to share this." Idiot. He could have made like 40K, but that'll happen. And it's like I sound like a paranoid freak probably, but that is the reality of it. Like I've watched this happen multiple times. I've seen this happen to multiple people, not just myself. You just be very wary of it when it comes to this whole networking thing that people like want to do. It's like you can do it, but you just got to really, really trust the people you're around. And even then, relationships can fall out. So you
Yeah,
could
it's
get your
almost
stuff.
better just to share like information, maybe sales or yeah, I mean, yeah, it just goes back and forth. I mean, I share with like maybe 2 or 3 people, but that's kind of it. It's hard to share with more because unless you're finding 15, 20 things a day, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, if you could find 3 to 5 good things, I mean, you can only share so much with others.
Yeah, and the reality too, the biggest I ever was doing like 180, 200K a month. I was talking to other sellers that were doing millions and millions of dollars a year. We weren't sharing any leads, and they didn't talk to anybody. And to this day, I know a seller that does $6 million a year very profitably. He doesn't talk to anybody. He would very rarely talk. I tried to network with him because I just thought he was really smart and he was a really cool guy. He never shared anything with me, and now he left all the groups and he doesn't talk to anybody at
That's
all. He
crazy.
has zero networking, only his own thing. And those top guys are a lot like that. They don't share with anybody else. They only do their own thing. And there's a good reason for it. And those are the guys that are making more than 50 of these network sellers combined. So yeah,
Yeah, I think
that's just
because those guys too, in the grand scheme of things, their main source is Amazon, and they
Mhm.
realize they can make more doing that than, or it's probably less work for them just to do that than it is to have a group and do social media and sell courses. Like, it's just easier for them to sit there and just crank and do what they know works, and just that works for them.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys too don't have the personality to make that stuff happen either. That's
True.
another reality of that. If you have the personality to get to $10 million a year with Amazon, and you're like this real big nerd, smart guy, you're probably not gonna like get on social media and talk.
True.
So that's another reason. That was a long rant, though, man. We're at 45 minutes. But what's another recap from these pods? I guess the let's move to the Lego guy because I
Uh,
thought that me and him have been talking, and that guy's really really smart. And not only he kind of convinced me on Legos, but just with his marketing stuff that he likes and his like vision for all his stuff, very very impressive with that guy too.
Yeah, Shane, yeah, he's really, really smart. I've known him for about 2, 3 years now. And yeah, Lego investing definitely has caught my eye. Um, if you haven't listened to that episode, definitely listen to that, because I think there's just a lot of generic nonsense that people kind of throw out. But oh yeah, like Lego is great. Lego is not great usually throughout the year. It's great in like Q4, when there's like shortages at stores, or certain sets are really hot, and you could get them quickly, or yeah, they're a retired set or it's a rare set, and then you can make money. I feel like the whole thing with Lego, everyone always thinks, and you could see it definitely in the keep it charts a lot, is a set will come out, let's just say like a Valentine's Day set, everyone will buy it thinking that it's going to like skyrocket in price. And most of the time it doesn't. Amazon will come on the listing, or you know, it's 10 people now, but then within a week or two it's 100, 200, 300 people, and then it's just tanking down. So he really kind of breaks down exactly what to look for in those kind of sets, and kind of how to think about it. And even him, like an experienced investor, like he's just like, yeah, usually they only make X these for a year, but they decided to extend it, and then they extended another year. So just like anything else, it's nothing's super predictable, I guess, in reselling. And I feel like sometimes it's disingenuous how some people talk about it. It's like, oh, you just look at the Keepa from last year. Well, if you were looking at the Keepas for last year for those like Crayola things that we were just talking about, you would know that now on the listing, it's about, some of them have like 10 times as many
Yep.
sellers. And if you look back in 2022, it was like 10. Then 2023, let's just say it was 15. Now it's like 100. So you saw that pattern, like, okay, like a couple other people caught on like a year later, but now everyone's onto it. And you're definitely not going to get that price. I mean, people are still going to try. I mean, hopefully not the people in the school group, but I mean, a lot of people will, just because people are like, oh yeah, like don't pay attention to the Keepa. Like it will sell for higher. It's just not showing that. And while that does happen occasionally, it is usually not the case.
Yeah, with that Crayola thing, I mean, the seller count is the big issue there. I will say when it comes
And people
to
are like deep, like real
yeah,
deep.
yeah.
No,
The
we're not
problem
talking
is
like 5, 10 units. We're talking like 200, 300, 4, like I don't know what these people are thinking about.
Yeah, well, we'll say that the seller count's the issue because the selling higher thing and stuff like I broke down. I might have broke this down in your call what I did for your group,
I think you did,
but the
yeah.
math on those Crayola things do work. I gave that to a guy last year and he made $12,000 in 30 days profit. So
Yeah.
it does work. It's just the problem now is all those sellers, which I assume I haven't even looked at this shit, but like the if there's a lot of sellers, that affects everything. That's why I was said that on the last pod too. The offer count's kind of all that matters because if the offer count's low, weird stuff can happen that's not shown on the Keepa.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend against going on anything with that many offers on it. But
They're all
yeah,
like 100 above. It's absolutely insane.
yeah, it's just social media. Just like that's just the part of the game. Like it's just gonna get more of that stuff's just gonna get more and more saturated. You're just gonna have to carve something that you don't find on the internet. But that's like the reality if you're watching this and you're like, maybe I'll meet somebody who has some like secret trick, like maybe, but then 50 other people have it, and now it's not a secret, and now it's not even a trick, and you just lost money. So, yeah. But with the Lego stuff, I did think when I get a house and get like an established place to store these things, I'm 100% going to do that in the future. Because after hearing him talk about it, I knew everything he was saying based on my experience with Lego in the past. I just kind of gave it up because I didn't have the storage, I guess, or I don't really know why I didn't do it anymore. I just kind of got burned so many times I didn't want to. But well, the way he thought about it, of like buying them really low, so you don't have to sell them for 4x. You can sell them for 2x retail or 1.5x retail. And you're still making profit because you got them at 50% off. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I didn't really know that in the past. I was just buying
Yeah.
retail and hoping they were going to double, which is just a stupid strategy. But yeah, he enlightened me on that for sure. And
Yeah.
that's a good.
Yeah. I think that one of the biggest takeaways from that too is know why you're buying it. Like he was very specific, like, okay, I'm buying it now. Best case in a year from now, it's 1.5, 2 times the price. If not, a year and a half from now, it's probably we're going to be good to go. And if not, after 2 years, it's time to let it go, or who knows what the market looks like. But yeah, I think too, like I've definitely bought a bunch of Legos and lost money on them just because it was a hot set, or Amazon was out of stock last year, so the same thing's going to happen this year. Just kind of stupid stuff like that. But I mean, I guess you got to try
Yeah.
before you know for yourself sometimes.
And it's just a good alternative investment. Like I invest in crypto, I do the stock market, I do all that stuff. Like just to have another alternative investment you can dump a few grand a month into is never really a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree.
And then on the book guy, DVD guy, segue again. What I found the most interesting about that guy was how just like authentic he was about everything,
Yeah,
and how he like doesn't really want to make more money. He just kind of
yeah,
is like chill with making this amount of money he is, which is like foreign to me. Like I don't even understand that mindset, but it was very cool to see it of him being like, I have enough money for me, my family. Like I don't need a bunch of other stuff. I just like it the way it is, which is just cool because you never really run into people like that in business. I feel like in real life, you run into that all the time, whether people are coping or not. But in business, where you do experience the abundance of like what you can accomplish, and him to just be like, I'd just rather accomplish this. That was like really interesting to me because I'm a young guy. I like taking in the experiences anyway. So that one, you just don't hear that often. I don't know if I've ever really heard that before, to be honest.
yeah. I agree with you there, and I think that for me, a big takeaway from there was knowing what you want, and once you get it, trying to be happy with it. I almost think that everyone always says that's kind of like the key to life. And yeah, I had the same kind of revelation you had, and I think that's kind of having that almost how he has it set up just makes him to be super successful because one, he's obviously not over leveraged. Two, he's happy like where he's at, and I think there's something to be said for that, where you're happy where you're at, and if you look at everything else as just like gravy on top, you're gonna be really happy. Instead of always kind of, it took me a long time to get there. I think I'm finally there with Amazon. It's like I'm happy doing this a month. I have some other stuff going on that I really like doing, and this is kind of going to be my balance and allocation for right now, and it works for me. I think if you get to that state, because what typically happens, is as you're trying to scale, I think especially if you're trying to scale fast, you start making mistakes. And then when you make mistakes, you lose money. So you kind of lose money that, let's just say you made like 100K or whatever, and then you're starting to scale, and then you lost 25 of that. Okay. You start to get flustered, and then you, and it just kind of, and then you're like, all right, like in order to scale, I need to do this or that. And then it just becomes this big mess of a thing. Like you had something really, really profitable, and now you're trying to double that, but you're not necessarily doubling your profit. And now you have all this loss and waste and people to manage. And you're like, what the hell happened? Like, maybe you're less profitable now. Like, not by much, but, for all the extra effort and capital you're putting in there, it doesn't seem worth the endeavor. So I think being kind of content with that is huge, and definitely almost makes you probably a better business owner.
Yeah, 100%. I think on what you were saying about scaling up and it not like turning out profitable like you think it is. There was a post that Chris Potter made on this when he like first entered Twitter, and I thought it's the most valuable post on Amazon on Twitter. And I like can't find this thing. I forgot what he called it, but it was some type of like annualized compounded ROI type thing. And it's
I've
like the
heard
really
that.
the only statistic that matters in this business from my takeaway from that. Now, I don't even know if he said that, but like with all the experience I have and all the people that I talk to, it's like that's the only thing that matters. And it's like how much capital you have and how much actual ROI you're getting on your capital allocated and how much you're actually getting back to yourself, that type of thing. He broke it down. If you guys look at Chris Potter's Twitter, look up ROI. Maybe you'll find what I'm talking about, or just scroll back to when he started because it was one of them that took off. But it just got hidden. I just don't see people talk about it anymore. I'd have no reason to talk about it, but that's the thing that matters. And it's about like how much money you're actually making on the capital you have working, not what seller board shows you, not what inventory lab shows you, not whatever. It's really just about whatever this metric that he talked about was. And if you don't have that dialed in, you really can't scale because you're not going to be making money just because you're going to see your inventory lab or you're going to see your seller board, but it just doesn't really matter because you're so leveraged and you have all these other things that come into play that aren't shown on those type of softwares.
Yeah, that's what makes Amazon so tricky is, and I always try to tell people this, it's not where you can, buy 10 of these microphones, you pay $100 for 10, right? You send it in, they all sell, Amazon pays you out, hopefully you make some money. So now you have $150 and you reinvest the 150. It doesn't work like that. Because if it
Nope.
worked like that, it'd be real easy to be like, okay, this is not working, this is working, or whatever. It's like, no, you buy 10 microphones, 10 water bottles, like some of it sells, some of it doesn't sell, then you buy some like it's just you just keep buying and buying and buying. And if you stop buying, like your sales go down and you're like, where's all this money? And then it turns out some is lost, like in prep, and it just becomes this like massive nightmare if you don't have your systems in place or checks in place. So yeah, it's always really interesting to kind of see that for me. And yeah, I think you just kind of like a rule of thumb, I feel like you should be able, one, to pay your credit cards every month. I feel like that's like kind of a big one. And then be able to take money out of the business. So like I take a certain amount out every single month. Cash back is just kind of like a bonus for me. So I'm not like relying on that. Like that's not baked in. So I take out a certain amount, max out a Roth IRA, and then yeah, be able to pay the credit cards every month. And I mean, maybe not on paper that's like deemed healthy, but I mean, it's healthier than most, I feel like. And I also have QuickBooks and an accountant that, the
Yeah,
math
it's funny.
works
The
out.
point the point you bring up about how simple it is. Yeah, I was explaining literally this weekend. So I was like just drinking on the lake, and this guy that I had went to college with, he came up and he was like, "Oh, where do you work now?" And I'm like, "Dude, I haven't even worked a job. Like, I've been a business owner for like 4 years." Where he's like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Well, I used to sell on Amazon. Now I do this other thing." And I had made all this money from Amazon. I was trying to explain my story, and it's easy for me to explain it to guys like you and other business
Yeah.
guys, but having some like, for lack of a better term, like normie type of person, like just that works a normal job. Yeah, I was like, how do I even explain to this guy that I had this highly profitable venture that I just didn't want to do anymore because it was complicated? And I just had to break it down of like, I was making good money, but to make 20K, say I would have to invest 100K into this. And it sounds really good if you're talking about the stock market or something like that. But it's not as simple as I just put up 100K and then I get 20K back. I
Right.
would put up 100K per month and then hope that I get a little bit back on the side, but I don't have to reinvest it next month. That type of thing. It just gets really, really complicated. And it's not as simple as just, oh, you get 30% every 60 days. And if you compound that 4 times, you're just going to be rich. It's just not that simple.
Yeah.
And I think he understood it, but probably not. But some of the stuff, I don't know. When you're doing e-com in general, it's just a way longer cash cycle. Like when I'm doing this info stuff now, I've started running Facebook ads and they're not profitable, but it's really easy to see. Like the other day, I spent $67 on ads and I got $27 back. Spent the money the same day, got the money back the same day. And then if the person
Mm.
buys high ticket in the future, it comes in. But like, okay, I lost $40 that day, but I lost, like, that's it. And if I would have got 3 more sales, then I would have made that much money that day. And it's like very simple to see because it's not an e-com. Well, I guess that's still e-com, but it's not an inventory based thing where you have
Yeah,
cash
it
cycles, you
is.
have stuff like that.
But with
So that's like,
Amazon, it's like you have orange bars of sales. Those are potential sales. Like those aren't final locked in. Like some people don't pay for it or like they sit in pending orders and then like return. Like there's all sorts of stuff. But yeah,
yep,
like for you, like you're saying, you have cut and dry math. Hey,
yeah,
we spent $1,000 on ads. We sold 10 things. That's $270. You know, we're down XYZ. Is this still a good idea? Is this not a good idea?
yep.
And then you can move forward. But with Amazon, you have winners, losers, more inventory going in, more inventory going out, returns, things getting lost. Um, and it just makes for this like jumbled, I guess, mess you could call it. I think it would be easier too if like more people like almost only use like 1 or 2 credit cards. But when you
Yeah.
start rotating like multiple credit cards and they're not necessarily tied to certain things, like I've gotten a good habit. Like I have 2 cards for inventory and then basically 1 card for software and
Mhm.
just other like admin stuff. That definitely helps a little because it's like, okay, this is software. I like having the software stuff because I'm always prone to try new software. So I always make sure to look at that bill and be like, whoa, what is this? Like, oh, I don't use that anymore. Like, I gotta cut this. Instead of if it's lost in inventory, it's hard to catch. Um, but yeah, I
That
mean,
makes it easy for your accountant too. That's a good
yeah,
idea.
for sure.
I always thought about doing that, but I was like, I'm too lazy to switch them all over. That's a good idea though. I might actually do that soon. That's a
I
just to keep things clean.
it's a pain in the ass to switch it over, but it also makes you look at it.
Yeah.
So, because like if you're gonna cancel it, you might as well just cancel it.
Yep.
And yeah, there were a couple of things I ran into. I was like, "What is this?" Or it's like, "Oh, I had a Gmail account that somehow I signed up for $5." I'm like, "I don't what? Like, I don't even use this anymore." Or just like little stuff like that. Or like you test out a plugin. Or I was so mad the other day. I got hit with like a VPN. Like I bought a VPN for a VA like a year ago, and I guess I paid up front. It was like $60, and I got charged with it the other day. And same with LastPass. So it must have been all
Yeah.
for this one VA. And I reached out to the VPN. It was literally that day I got charged. I was like, "Hey, like, my bad." And they're like, "No, like, we're not giving you a refund." I'm like, "All right, you guys are pieces of shit, but like, I guess that's my bad anyway." But just like stuff like that. So sometimes signing up, I almost never sign up for the year for that reason. But they must have done like some deal where it was like, "We'll give you half the year free" or something.
Yeah, yeah, dude, I get those all the time, man. And where I've switched businesses to like not none of the Amazon software, I got paid $250 a week ago for a Seller Snap affiliate, and I have zero clue how someone got that link. Like literally no clue. I don't even know if I ever promoted that. I've sent that to less than 5 people, but I got paid $250 for it, which is just crazy. But
Wow.
most of the time it's the opposite. Most of the time I'm getting charged for stuff that, and then
Yeah.
you can't cancel it and you can't get a refund because it's a software. I have so many going right now. I have like Mid Journey and all these AI tools, and then I have a Google. That I just wrote that down, Google Suite, because I have one of those accounts. I get charged $6 a month, and then I get charged something else on top of it. I don't even know when I made the email. I think I
Maybe
made it last week.
storage now. You
Yeah, I
probably have a
remember.
lot. Yeah, I had to pay for storage because it's like, oh, you either like delete all your emails and like go through uh your drive, or you give them $6. I'm like, let's give them $6.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it a lot.
Like you're like, there's some stuff you don't want to delete, and it's just like it becomes like a time game too. It's like after the VPN, I was like, I'm not reaching out to LastPass. Like I'm not wasting another 1 to 2 hours to be like, no, like you were supposed to cancel it.
Yep.
And then
Man,
like so I'd rather just eat it, I guess.
I paid that 20K for that like mastermind type thing. I paid the 20K up front, and I was paying $500 a month for the group that was on the lower tier. Well, I was still getting charged for the 500 and didn't even know it. And I noticed the charge this weekend. Just luckily, like I don't even really check my cards like that. And I was like, hey, I think I got charged. And they looked at it, and I'd actually been charged 3 times or 2 times over one of the two. I've lost $1,000 on this for no reason. So they refunded me nicely, but that's like an info group, so they have more of a
Yeah.
reason to not screw me over. But there's companies that do that stuff. I'll probably download one of those things where it audits your credit card statements and
Oh
sees
yeah, I've
like
definitely seen
what
those.
stuff. Yeah, I need to do that. It's probably saved me like an extra $800 a month because I know I'm paying for stuff right now that I don't need to be paying for.
Yeah, I just thought of two things that like I'm paying for too. And I think it also depends on like what point you are at your business. Like that software stuff like really adds up
Mm-hmm.
when you're kind of, $80 here, $60 there, $20 here, $40 there. And then if you don't really use this stuff, I mean, I actually just canceled my tactical arbitrage subscription, I think last month. It's like $80. I think in your head you just try to justify it as like, oh man, I found so many products using this. But it was really like 4 ASINs, like in a search, and you're like, wow, like I made probably like 15-20K on these ASINs. But now you don't use it though. Like it's
Yeah.
great, but you're not doing the searches anymore, and like it's not as good. And so I'm not saying, I'm not trying to like shit on them, but I just wasn't using them anymore. It's more keep a product finder, more manual stuff. So as your business needs change, it's kind of hard to kind of get rid of those things. But yeah, if you have that on a card with inventory and you're spending 30, 40K, it's going to be real hard to catch those like little $10, $20 things
Yep. Bye
and this
bye.
in this
Bye bye.
statement.
Tactical arbitrage affiliate.
Yeah. Ooh, I guess they're not going to sponsor the
You
podcast.
never talk about tactical arbitrage. That bye bye sponsor. We're getting hit up every day for new sponsors.
Yeah. So if you're interested in sponsoring, hit us
No,
up.
but I guess we did a big recap of these things. I don't know. Do you have any other takeaways from these guests, or kind of over the past, whatever amount of episodes? I feel like it's flew by.
I know. I think this will be episode 34 maybe when this goes live, which is crazy to think. I think the biggest takeaway is there's just so many ways to make money on Amazon. We've talked to people that do it part-time, full-time. Some people sell on Walmart. There's just so many different things you could do. I think one of the biggest takeaways might be, I didn't even talk about it, is from Joji. He flips used books. And he said something like, we asked him, oh, do you want to do online arbitrage or something like that? And he's like, oh, I just do books because I know no one's going to beat me in books because that's all I'm focused on. And I think for most of these guests, they have a single focus. Emily's very focused on Walmart. Jonathan does Amazon, sources very specific stuff using Keepa. Like that, like they're all experts in these like little categories, little niches, and don't really, unless they have to, kind of go after different brands or different categories and just kind of stick the path and just get better and better and better with those brands or those sites. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. And until you kind of have, I don't want to call it systems, but something in place where you could do less, you probably shouldn't take on more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. That's your key takeaway, because that's literally this
Because
is
I'm
the
not doing that myself.
yeah. Well,
But I've
also,
gotten a lot better. I cut a lot this year, and I'm down to like 3 main things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, you know me, I'm like at one thing and that's it. Like I just refuse to listen to other stuff. And even I get intrigued with all these pods that we do because I'm like, I do have the free time to do this. I'm not busy every hour of the day. I'm very not that busy. But my mental energy is all taken on with this one thing. Yeah, the last thing I had here was it is very easy to get lost to this stuff and feel like you aren't where you need to be. And
Yeah,
I
for
promise
sure.
you, the people that you're listening to, whether it be on this podcast or on other podcasts, they make it seem very easy because they're very, very good at what they do. But if you go try to do it, it's very hard. Like, I don't know if I talked about this or not. Probably not, since we haven't done a solo one since there. But I downloaded Joji's thing and started trying to do the book thing for probably 2 days because I knew that I knew what A to A was like. I knew that type of thing. I was in there and I'm like, what the hell is all this? Like that, this is way harder than it seems. And it
Yeah,
is harder. But to him, he explains it so easily and he shows it so easily because he's so, so good at it. Which is funny, just like that's a full wraparound. Because that was the first thing I tried from the pod. And then I'm like, okay, I'm not, that's just ridiculous. Like there's no way I'm gonna get to learn that stuff. That's gonna take me 6 to 12 months to just get good at that. And I don't have the mental bandwidth to even do that. And it doesn't cross over with anything else I'm doing. So there's no point in even doing it at all. So when you guys listen to this stuff and you're like, oh, I want to try Legos or I want to try used books or used DVDs or whatever everybody's doing, just realize that these people are very, 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 very good at what they're
yeah.
doing. And if you're going to do it, make a full commitment into like, I'm doing that and that's all I'm doing because it's too hard to balance a bunch of stuff on one plate. You're just not going to get good at anything.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And yeah, I think that's a really good takeaway too, because I think a lot of people do that. Like someone asked me the other day, oh, is this software worth it? I was like, well, it depends on what you do with it, right? Like, is Keepa worth it? Well, if you don't use Keepa Product Finder, you're not looking at Amazon products, probably not.
Nope.
But if you want to source and you want to find stuff other people aren't finding, then yeah, it's worth it. But it's like what you put into it. And like you were saying with the book software, you were just like, yeah, I tried it for 2 days, right? Like if you told them to that, but like, yeah, like no shit, you're not good. Like use it for 2 days. Like we've literally been using this for like a year or two or 3 years. So you just get quicker. You see patterns, and I think if anything you take away from this, is probably everyone that we've had on so far has been doing it at least 2 3 years. At least 2 years. We don't really get it, not to my knowledge, anyone doing it less, unless
No,
Rick. Is Rick?
Sadiq's definitely the youngest one. He's still been
Yeah.
doing it over 2 years. And you count the shoes, he's been doing that for like 7 years.
True. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. I get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some version of reselling or some version of business. Yeah. Probably everyone's like 3 5 years. So that just goes to show you that Yeah. That Sadiq's actually a great example because he blew up his Amazon store, and you'd be like, oh wow, like he blew it up, but he was also reselling shoes what 2 3 years prior, and that's not to take anything away from him. It just
Yeah.
gives
Yeah.
him a massive head start because what he was reselling on eBay and Poshmark or wherever the hell else he was selling, right? All that stuff is good for Amazon. He knows how to get the shoes at the cheapest prices and the drops and the apps and all that stuff. So that gives him a huge leg up that a lot of people won't have. So if you don't have kind of a leg up, that doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just going to take you longer.
Yeah, and he's also an extremely smart kid. I didn't even
Yeah.
know that because I hadn't talked to him much. But what was he saying that he won some programming award when he was in high
Yeah.
school? Okay, you can't be dumb and do that. So he's obviously a super smart kid. So that's another thing to take into account. I think with all this stuff too, and this is what I've kind of really taught, like learned myself and taught myself or whatever over the last few months. And it's really hard to get this lesson on social media because I don't think a lot of people talk about how important this is, especially because I feel like I'm a smart guy. I had success in other business. I have a lot of money. I have decent connections, that type of thing. A lot of this stuff takes a really long time for you to get good at. And it can take way longer than you think it does. You just got to keep working on it. Like I'm fully ready to not be an expert in the stuff that I'm doing for 3 years.
Mm.
Like I might not be someone who's top of the field for 3 5 years. Like I'm fully okay with that. Now maybe I am by the end of this year. You never know. I mean, but also I'm okay with being 3 to 5 years. And if you can think on a longer time span, that just heals everything. Like all the
Yeah.
problems you're having now, over 3 years, over 5 years, you will not have those problems. Like you will overcome those hurdles and you if you stay consistent and you keep doing it. Which it seems generic, I guess, but a lot of times people just say 3 to 6 months and you'll figure it out. Yeah, I mean, from my experience, that's just not the case. Like, that's not
Yeah.
enough time for you to really learn something. The guys that get really good, a lot of times they put in 10,000 hours. That's the rule, 10,000 hour rule. If you haven't put 10,000 hours, which is a lot of hours when you break that down, you're probably not going to be that great at stuff. And if you, that's a lesson that I wish everybody could understand that, because I think people's time frames are just too small. Even mom was, but now I'm
Yeah.
kind of at the point where
And
I'm
I
okay.
think, yeah, I think the reason 3 to 6 months too is not enough time because it doesn't leave enough time for bad shit to happen, right?
Yeah,
If you're doing Amazon's a great example. You could buy like for books, like when I first started, I probably didn't really lose money on many books. Like 3 months, like how many books could I possibly gotten in 3 months, right? Like four, 500, maybe 1,000, right? How many am I losing on that? Or right, like in 6 months, Amazon might not lose a big shipment of yours, but they're gonna lose one eventually. Or you're gonna get an IP complaint, or bad shit's gonna happen. So until that kind of stuff happens, and it's just really hard to master. And I think it's just, I guess, I don't know how else you would market it because, if someone's like, "Oh, this is so hard," you're like,
yeah,
it's gonna take you a year to figure this out, and my student, after 12 months, people would be like, "Yeah, I don't." 12
yeah.
months, like, nah, like I'm good. So I get why it's marketed how it's marketed, but I don't know. I don't know if there's a balance or not. Or who knows, maybe you just like accept like there are some people who if you're like, yo, if you do this for 12 months, like you'll be a killer, they'll be like, all right, let's go.
Yeah,
Not a lot of people. But
that's getting rarer and rarer too. We live in like a
yeah.
short form attention place. I mean, how many people are still watching this podcast hour and 14 minutes? Probably not a lot. Their attention rate probably shot down. That's like a lot of people can't stay focused for that long. And I understand, I'm like that too. It's really hard to watch stuff for a long time or stay with stuff for a long time. So yeah, 12 months, that's like ridiculous. Yeah, I want to see what can I do in the next 12 days to get rich? It's like
Yeah.
nothing. Like start gambling now. That's like the only way that
Yeah.
you're going to try. Like, so I don't know that it's just across social media. That type of thing is just how it is, and it's only going to get worse. It's never going to get. No one's ever going to tell you the reality, but that is the reality. And trust me, I know because I've been suffering from it for the last 7 months, and I'm just like, and I got stopped. A huge hurdle. I made a huge decision on what I was going to do. I built the whole website. I started everything, and
Yeah.
then it just flopped. So that was exactly a bad thing to happen. Now I have to go pay all this money again to restart the whole website, redo the whole offer, redo the product, all that kind of thing. And shit, I might have to do it again. Who knows? I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
I will at this point because I have paid enough money to make sure it was
Yeah.
good.
And it looks
But
really good. So
yeah, but
I
that
think you're
stuff always
good at this
happens.
point.
I might have to change the angle. I might have to change certain things, and that's just how it kind of goes in all business. But yeah,
Yeah, and I think one like you almost have to ask yourself, how could I make this work?
yeah,
A lot of people are, oh, this doesn't work. Well, what happens if you had to make it work? What would you do? And I
mhm,
think that in lies the answer. And it's probably when you ask, well, how would you make it work? Your answer is probably not what you want to do, but that's what you have to do, unfortunately. And a lot of people, and it is kind of fortunate because a lot of people won't do that.
yeah. I'm happy you said that. I just now the idea sparks into my mind. I'm gonna have a conversation with like my thing. Obviously, I'm the one building it. There's somebody else on the
Yeah.
front end, and I just had a conversation yesterday about like the guy's not really posting. He's like one of my best friends. I just lifted with him today, but he's like not really posting content on social media.
Oh,
He doesn't
yeah.
really want to do that thing. And I'm like, dude, you need to do this to make this work because that if you become semi popular, then
Yeah.
this will work no matter what I throw on this website or no matter what we have. This is just like a safe thing. But he just still isn't doing it, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, you need to you need to take into consideration that like what you don't want to do is the only way this shit's gonna work. 100% if that happens. So
I've really been thinking about that a lot with kind of the influencer program a lot. Like I've got it to a point where, it's good and it's like to take it to the next stage, it's like, oof, man, like this is gonna be hard to kind of do this. And I was like, there's probably so many people that one aren't gonna get to this stage, two are not gonna want to do the next steps that you have to do. But if you want to make X amount per month, Like you have to do that. Like there's no other way around it. So you either stay where you are right now at like your 1,000-ish videos or whatever, or you do what you have to do to get to 2,000 and 3,000 and all these other ones. And there are other people who are doing some like other different things that they're hard to get into. Like it's basically there are some like programs that are invite only. You used to be able to reach out to support, and that doesn't work anymore. So I'm like, oh, like shit. Like I'm just, it's just annoying, kind of, because you just can't like will your way in there. But it's like, well, if you just keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, like eventually they're gonna invite you to the
Yeah.
program, right? Most people are like, well, Drew got into the program. It's invite only now. Like, I'm never going to get into the program. And they quit, and then they never get into the program. Or
Yeah.
like they're just like, oh, like the program's open for everyone who's been like posting videos, at least 100 videos every month. And they're like, shit, like if I would have just kept posting 100 videos a month, like I would have been in the program. But now, so I think you really have to think about stuff like that. Like when you're about to quit or something, yeah, there are times to quit, or like if you're like losing a lot of money or something like that on Amazon. But if it's just hard, I heard this thing today from like Ryan Pineda, and I kind of think in a way that Amazon space might be here. I think there's just a big storm right now, and he is like, the only way out of the storm is to work 4 times as hard and make the same amount of money. But once the storm goes away, you're going to make all the money because everyone else is going to leave. And I really do think that's kind of where the Amazon space is right now, in terms of just kind of like OA and the Nike. Like there's just like this perfect storm brewing, and it's only going to be the strong that survive. And if you could like stick with it, continue to make money, and just kind of put your head down, you'll be fine when everyone else quits.
Yeah. What was he talking about? Social? Was he talking about his Instagram stuff?
He was actually talking about, I think they were talking about real estate right now, or something
Oh,
about mortgage rates or something, how like they're really bad right now. But how I think he wanted to say like almost 70 or 80% of the people who used to do whatever dropped out. And so now there's like
yeah.
only 20%. And if they could like, they used to have these like massive deals and get all these commissions, and now they have to work like 10 times harder just to get like similar commissions. But he's like, once everyone goes away, like they're going to be the only people in the space, and then they like commissions and everything else will readjust eventually. um but when everyone else quits, I mean, only the strong survive.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I somewhat disagree with that because I do think there's an outside force that plays into the Amazon stuff, or not just Amazon. Like I'm talking like literally any
Yeah,
influencer program, like anything you are doing, there is an outside force that influences this stuff that we cannot control that will never stop. And that is the information, like the offer. You
true.
know, if everybody stops now, if everybody stops selling info and everybody stops telling people they can sell Crayola, that kind of stuff, then yes, that will be the strong survive. But if that never happens, and I don't think it will, then Amazon will never go in a cycle. Like these guys that are saying it goes in cycles, it might have went in cycles 5 years ago because there wasn't every single human being with an Instagram and a TikTok profile. But nowadays, you're not going to see influencers fall off. Like influencers will fall off. Like, okay, technically I fell off, and like guys like me have fell off. But when I fall, 10 replace me. Not that the strong ones don't get even bigger. They're just 10 that come to the thing. Like I've watched it happen on Twitter. There's so many influencers still there that have just taken over it. And now it's like, well, now they're all pushing this stuff and they're all bringing new people in. So you always have with any of these online businesses, more people are coming in all the time. Where in real estate, it's different because
Mm.
you have like literal things that happen with interest rates and stuff like that like that does go in cycles because that's the whole economy. Rather than if Amazon was having downturn in sales, I would say that would be different. Or if like a random business like your ecom supplement business was down in sales, that's different. But there would just be more and more and more that are pushed in. I don't know if there's actually any business on the internet that has went in like a cycle. Like, it's all just gets
Mm.
more saturated. Like you think about, I'm trying to think of some old businesses, drop shipping. that's one that the reason it cycled is because organic got big, which is like what I'm talking about. So the
True.
only reason that that revived is because people could post videos all the time for free, which was never an option because you had to make it work on Facebook ads or Google ads. But there was a lot of old businesses that have just got pushed out. I mean, copywriting is even kind of one that's getting pushed out currently.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
AI.
an interesting point that you bring up. I like semi agree. I do wonder though. So like you will see now, like when we first started, no one's doing videos on like keep a product finder, like oh here's how to get engaged in Corolla and stuff like that. I do wonder if less people stick though. So like all the information's out there, right? You get access to it. Like these Crayola listings, like how many of these people that are new are going to stick around after this back to school season? If they lose a
Well,
bunch
that's
of
not what I'm
money
saying.
buying all this stuff. So I do think that while more come in and other influencers pop up and they give away all the information, like if you are a new influencer, like, hey, John, go buy a Crayola. I lose a shitload of money on Corolla. I'm gonna be like, well, Drew's an idiot, and
Yep.
this Amazon thing is stupid. And then eventually that will get around. I'm not saying that brings the whole reselling like back full circle, but I think it's in an interesting cycle where like since everything's like out there, it's only going to take you have to do a lot of extra work. So you have to take
Yep.
that Corolla and like figure out the 5 listings that make sense, which is going to require like either coaching or a little bit extra help. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And I think I don't know. We'll see though.
Do you think more people drop off than stay? Or no, not stay. Do you think more people drop off than new people come in?
I feel like I've seen a lot of people's storefronts that I have that are bigger, influential. Their ASIN counts are way down. Not that
Yeah,
they
but that's
dropped
that's
off.
just
Well, yeah,
yeah.
they're selling information, but I think a lot of people don't stick with it. Like I know so many accounts that are created and then they just drop off. There's
Yeah.
always
Well,
the problem is there's always new ones because I think the big issue is you don't say there's no like what is it like in the army or whatever when you quit you got to ring the bell so everyone knows
yeah.
someone quit. So like there's no bell, there's no Amazon bell to be like oh I quit or I lost money or so I think if you run stats like that if you could run that I think the amount of seller accounts, like, can you imagine how many seller accounts were open slash created slash someone joined like a Discord and then just never bought anything?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is stats on seller accounts open per year, and it does go up by a substantial percentage every single year, like a lot. And
Interesting.
the reason all this stuff happens too, I heard someone say this. It was a coaching program I was in last year, and this guy was like, you guys don't need to start a new info. It was an info type coaching program. He was like, you don't need to start a new business model or you don't need to start a new big thing. You just need to attach yourself to the wave that's already there of Hormozy, of Tate,
Mm,
of billions of dollars of ads being ran on Facebook and Google and YouTube every single day. You don't have to like start your own wave. You just have to jump in the wave of all the people that are bringing all the people into this space already. Because the fact that Hormozy and Tate and all these guys exist, there's just an influx of people always coming in because those guys aren't hitting
true.
a downturn anytime soon. And as soon as they hit a downturn, there'll be another guy that rises up. And those guys create these waves of like everybody jump in, like jump in the boat. You just have to like, you know, make your own boat in that lane. I think that's the big thing with it. And it's like you can't stop the ad spend. You can't stop the people that
Yeah,
are spending ads to say, here's how to make 10K a month in the next 3 months with Amazon FBA, that type of thing. Like that will never ever stop because there's more money to be made doing that than there is with anything.
true.
That's like the biggest black pill of all of it. It's like that. That's why these things never slow down is because there's more information selling the shovels, right? Than mining the gold. That's the
Yeah,
tell.
a lot of shovel sellers for sure.
Yeah. I think that's just like kind of how it goes. Which maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a downturn that happens eventually, but I just don't see like logically how it even would be possible. But maybe if the economy hits a recession, that could happen. You know, people. Well, actually, that's the complete opposite because if we hit a recession, more side hustles are started under recessions than anything.
Yeah,
So That's like that's the some kind of statistic. I don't know, because you're looking for more income because you can't buy anything because
I
you got
also
fired.
think too, like it should be interesting to see, like, yeah, I get like your point too, and it's also be interesting to see as other people diversify. Like I've seen some people that I've been following for a while that are big in the space. Like I just saw someone the other day like post that they started an Etsy shop like a couple months ago, and like that's starting to take off. But they're you know, and people are doing the TikTok and all this other stuff, so it should be interesting. I think as people kind of start doing that, I don't know. I think, yeah, it just really depends. But I guess the big takeaway is maybe if you focus on one thing, you can
Yeah,
make it work regardless.
yeah. What people really need to know is like if you, especially if you're in a situation where you're hitting your head against the wall against Amazon, you better be 100% sure that that's what you want to do for a long time. Actually, I
Yeah.
just had a call yesterday with Rick. That's who I talked to him yesterday. He's been booking calls since last February. I've been like, yeah, we just talk all the time, which he repaid me very well yesterday, which was awesome. But yeah, I was telling him, he's like, "What do I do, man? Do I start doing what you're doing, or do I stick with the Amazon thing?" And I was like, "It's not about like what's better or worse or whatever. It's just here's my thought on all of it, and then if you want to do the Amazon thing for a really long time and you like the way it's going and you disagree with me, then keep doing it. But if you think that I'm onto something here, then I'll happily tell you what to do." And yeah, I don't know what he's going to do, but I think he's going to sell out the rest of this year and then be done. Because he's the one that brought that up. He's the one that said eventually there will be a day where
Yeah, that's
some
true.
18-year-old will make $1 million a year in sales and make 60 grand. And he doesn't care because he's 18. He can work 80 hours a week to make 60 grand, which is actually exactly what you were just saying, right? It's like you have to
Yeah.
do 4 times the work to make the same amount of money. And if you're willing to do that and you love Amazon, you love reselling, stick with it and be the guy that does that. But if you don't want to be that guy, you really need to assess the situation you're in. Because it's like, am I really going to work like 60 hours to make 60 grand? At that point, it's like you really got to love what you're doing. Because if you love Amazon, then yeah, that's an awesome idea. And so you're living your dream at that point. So
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's an interesting point to bring up. Man, that was a long one. Hour
Yeah.
and 30 minutes. What I
Damn.
don't even want to close this thing. We haven't caught up in a long time on these pods, so
Yeah.
it makes for a good one.
Oh yeah. You got
What
anything
do you
else?
want to? Let us know if you guys want a live
Oh
stream
yeah, that's
because
right.
we will do that. I would love to. I know John wants to too. Like I
Yeah.
love those things. We just do that happy hour. Very fun. Interact with you guys and guest recommendations. We're exhausting
Yeah.
our options. So please give us more, or you're going to get more of these hour-and-a-half
Yeah.
rants from me and John.
Yeah. That's all I got. We'll see you guys on the next one. Like, subscribe. Definitely put in the comments about the live and everything else. And we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.
Peace.